Welcome back to my channel. Today we reopen the case that haunt Americans almost 30 years. I have spent years examining cold cases, piecing together fragments of evidence, witness statements, and behavioral patterns that refuse to align. Today, I begin a careful exploration of one of the most persistently debated unsolved homicides in American history: the death of JonBenét Ramsey.
Screamed that something horrible was going on. I didn't know what.
On December 26, 1996, in Boulder, Colorado. One unsettling verified fact stands out from the beginning and has never changed. Burke Ramsey, the 9-year-old brother of the victim, has never been charged with any crime. He has never been indicted. No prosecutor has ever named him an official suspect. There is no physical evidence, fingerprints, DNA, footprints, that has ever publicly placed him at the center of the crime scene in a way that demanded arrest. Yet, for nearly 3 decades, a single question has lingered in the background of every documentary, every forum discussion, and every re-investigation. Why does suspicion keep returning to Burke? The answer does not lie in a smoking gun. There is no confession. There is no damning forensic link that has been hidden from the public. Instead, the persistent unease surrounds something quieter and more elusive: silence, inconsistent behavior, and small details in the adult's accounts that do not quite fit together. When a child is killed inside the family home on Christmas night, investigators naturally look first at the people who were present. In this case, 3 individuals were in the house that night: John Ramsey, Patsy Ramsey, and their son, Burke. The parents spoke publicly, gave interviews, hired attorneys, sat for hours of police questioning. Burke, by contrast, was largely absent from the narrative. A child of 9 was interviewed only briefly under highly controlled conditions and then effectively removed from the public eye. That absence itself became a kind of presence. Over the years, subtle patterns emerged in the way the family navigated media appearances, legal proceedings, and even casual conversation. Certain questions were consistently deflected. Certain moments were described in ways that shifted slightly with each retelling. Certain childhood behaviors described by those who knew the children raised quiet questions about impulse control, anger, and the boundary between rough play and something more dangerous. None of this constitutes proof. None of it justifies a conclusion. But in the absence of a clear alternative explanation, these gaps and inconsistencies have kept the focus on Burke Ramsey long after most investigators moved on to other theories. In the episodes that follow, I will walk you through the timeline as I have reconstructed it, drawing only from documented statements, police reports, and publicly released interviews. I will highlight the turning points where doubt deepened, not because of new forensic breakthroughs, but because of words spoken, words withheld, and behaviors that resist easy explanation. There are details still to come, moments from Burke's own adult interviews, recollections from family, friends, and discrepancies that have rarely been placed side by side. These are not accusations, they are observations that have refused to fade. If you have followed this case for years and believe you already know the story, I ask you to stay. The most unsettling elements are not in the headlines from 1996 or 1997. They surface in what was said and not said across the following 3 decades. The question is not whether Burke Ramsey is guilty. The question is why, after all this time, so many reasonable people still feel the need to ask. Let us begin. In the realm of criminal investigations, children occupy a delicate space. They are often seen as vulnerable witnesses to be shielded, not subjects to be scrutinized with the full weight of adult interrogation tactics. This principle, rooted in both law and ethics, aims to protect the young from trauma and coercion. But in the case of JonBenét Ramsey's death, it created an enduring gray area around her brother Burke, who was just 9 years old on that fateful Christmas night in 1996. As I delve deeper into this unresolved homicide, drawing from police reports, grand jury transcripts, and the family's own public statements, I find myself returning to this fundamental tension. How do you investigate a child without crossing lines that could invalidate the process? Let me set the scene with one verified, unsettling fact from the outset. On the morning of December 26, 1996, in the basement of the Ramsey home at 755 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado, JonBenet's body was discovered by her father, John Ramsey. She had been struck on the head, strangled with a garrote fashioned from a cord and a broken paintbrush handle, and there were signs of sexual assault. Burke, asleep upstairs, according to his parents, was the only other child in the house. No forced entry was evident, and the ransom note found on the stairs demanding $118,000, an eerily close sum to John's recent bonus, pointed to an inside job or someone intimately familiar with the family. This fact alone, the absence of clear external intrusion, has kept the spotlight on those present that night. To understand Burke's position as this investigative gray area, we must first consider the people involved, presented here with the restraint they deserve. JonBenét was a vibrant 6-year-old, known for her participation in child beauty pageants, a detail that later fueled media frenzy but tells us little about her as a person. She was curious, affectionate, and deeply loved by her family. Burke, her older brother by 3 years, was described by those who knew him as a typical boy, interested in scouts, video games, and model airplanes. He was quiet, perhaps introverted, with a history of minor sibling squabbles that any parent might recognize. John and Patsy Ramsey, successful and affluent, were pillars of their community. John, a CEO in the tech industry, Patsy, a former beauty queen turned homemaker. They had endured Patsy's cancer battle and the loss of an older daughter from a previous marriage, forging a family unit that appeared resilient. Yet, in the wake of the tragedy, their actions would be dissected endlessly. The timeline of the investigation's early days reveals how Burke's youth shaped his treatment. At 6:52 a.m. on December 26, 1996, Patsy called 911 reporting JonBenét missing and a ransom note discovered. Police arrived within minutes, securing the scene, or attempting to, amid a house soon filled with friends and family. Burke was awakened around 7 a.m., questioned briefly by officers in a casual manner, and then whisked away to a friend's house by 8:30 a.m., before the body was even found. This removal, standard procedure to shield a child from horror, meant he was not present for much of the initial chaos. His first formal interview came on December 27, 1997, conducted by a child psychologist at the request of the family's attorney, lasting about an hour. Questions were gentle. What did you eat for dinner? Did you hear anything unusual? Burke described hearing his parents' distress, but claimed he stayed in bed, feigning sleep when checked on. By January 1997, as the case shifted from kidnapping to homicide, Boulder police sought a more detailed interview, but legal protections kicked in. Colorado law, like many states, mandates that interviews with minors consider their age, emotional state, and potential for suggestibility. No Miranda rights were read, no aggressive cross-examination allowed. Burke's second interview on January 8, 1997, was videotaped with a detective trained in forensics. He drew pictures, answered about his sister's habits, and denied involvement. "I didn't do it," he said simply when asked directly. Yet even here the constraints were evident. No polygraph, no repeated grilling, no confrontation with inconsistencies in his parents' stories. This is where the gray area solidified. Burke was not investigated deeply, not swabbed for DNA immediately, not subjected to forensic behavioral analysis at the time, but neither was he fully cleared.
The district attorney's office under Alex Hunter leaned toward an intruder theory, influenced by the ransom note and unidentified DNA under JonBenét's fingernails. In 1999, a grand jury heard evidence but voted not to indict anyone, including Burke, though they recommended charges against the parents for child endangerment and obstruction, recommendations that were ignored. Publicly, Burke faded into the background, attending school, later college, living a private life. Yet in online forums, books, and documentaries, the void left by his limited scrutiny filled with speculation. Comparing the evidence from that era to the current state of the case in 2026 underscores how little has changed, yet how suspicion persists. Back in 1996-1997, physical evidence was sparse and inconclusive. The garrote, the duct tape over JonBenét's mouth, the wrist bindings all appeared staged for some experts, with no fingerprints linking to Burke or anyone else. A pineapple fragment in JonBenét's stomach matched a bowl found upstairs with Burke's fingerprints on it, but his parents denied serving it that night. Burke admitted in a 2016 interview to sneaking downstairs for a snack, but timelines didn't align perfectly. DNA from an unknown male on her clothing and under her nails excluded the Ramseys, including Burke, as the source of that sample. No blood or fibers tied him directly. Behaviorally, a 1997 Child Services report noted Burke's flat affect during interviews, but psychologists disagreed on its meaning, trauma or detachment. Fast forward to today, nearly 30 years later. The case remains unsolved, with Boulder police stating in 2024 that they continue to review tips, but no arrests imminent. Advances in DNA technology, like genetic genealogy used in other cold cases, have been applied here. In 2018, testing reaffirmed the unknown male DNA, but it hasn't led to a suspect. A 2023 independent review by a panel of experts commissioned by the city concluded the evidence still points away from an intruder, emphasizing staging and family involvement, but stopped short of naming anyone. Burke, now in his late 30s, has given rare interviews, most notably to Dr. Phil in 2016 and a brief one in 2021 where he maintains innocence, describing the night calmly. Yet these appearances have fueled more doubt. His smile during discussions of the murder struck some as odd, though experts caution against armchair psychology. Is it still possible that Burke was the perpetrator? From my examination of the records, the answer is a qualified yes, not probable, but not impossible. No new evidence has emerged to implicate him directly, and the DNA exclusion remains a hurdle. Legal experts note that even if involved, his age at the time, under 10, would have precluded criminal charges in Colorado, where the minimum age for prosecution is 10. Juvenile records would be sealed, treatment focused on rehabilitation. Statistically, child-on-child violence is rare but documented, often accidental or impulsive. In this case, the lack of a clear motive beyond sibling rivalry and the complexity of the staging ransom note in Patsy's handwriting style per analyst suggest adult involvement if Burke played a role. The theory lingers because alternatives falter. The intruder hypothesis requires ignoring the undisturbed snow, the note's insider knowledge, and the family's inconsistent statements. If we entertain hypotheses where Burke is central purely as thought exercises grounded in known facts, several emerge, each with its own logical threads and flaws. First, the accidental blow scenario. Imagine a late-night squabble over a toy or snack. JonBenét, known to follow Burke around the house, interrupts him downstairs. In a moment of frustration, he strikes her with a flashlight, matching the head wound per autopsy. Panicking, he attempts to cover up, perhaps drawing from movies or books. But a 9-year-old crafting a garrote and ransom note strains credulity. This leads to the parental cover-up extension. Burke causes the initial injury accidentally. The parents, discovering her unconscious, believe she's dead or fear scandal. They stage the rest, strangulation to ensure death, mercifully. Note to misdirect. This aligns with the grand jury's endangerment focus and explains why they didn't call 911 immediately for a head injury. Evidence: the note's phrasing mirrors Patsy's speech patterns and John's fibers on JonBenét's body. A second hypothesis: premeditated act stemming from jealousy. Pageants spotlighted JonBenét, potentially breeding resentment. Witnesses recall Burke hitting her with a golf club years earlier, ruled accidental. If deliberate, the murder could be an escalation. But child psychologists reviewing his interviews see no signs of psychopathy. He appeared cooperative, if awkward. Counterpoint, the bedwetting theory, where JonBenét's accidents enraged Burke, leading to violence. Autopsy showed no chronic issues, but it speculated. Third, the play gone wrong angle. Siblings experimenting with ropes or games turning fatal. The grot resembles scout knots Burke knew. If true, parents might have covered to protect him, aligning with their media defenses and lawsuits against accusers. In 2008, DA Mary Lacey exonerated the family based on DNA, but that was reversed informally by later officials. These are not accusations, merely reconstructions of theories floated by investigators like Steve Thomas or L. Smith, balanced against counterarguments. Known facts: Burke was in the house. His voice possibly on the 911 tape enhancement. What did you find? His 2016 admission of being awake. Unknowns: exact timeline downstairs. What the grand jury heard in sealed portions. Any private DNA matches. As I close this segment, the gray area around Burke endures, a product of legal safeguards and evidentiary gaps. It invites reflection. How do we balance child protection with truth-seeking? In the parts ahead, I'll explore the parents' roles in lingering forensic puzzles. Stay with me. These threads, woven carefully, may yet reveal patterns unseen. In the quiet hours after midnight on December 26, 1996, in the sprawling Ramsey home in Boulder, Colorado, a single detail emerged from the autopsy that quietly undermined the family's initial account of the night. JonBenét's stomach contained fragments of undigested pineapple, consumed perhaps 1 to 2 hours before her death. This fact, documented in the coroner's report, stands as one of the earliest points of verifiable inconsistency. The people at the center of this detail deserve careful introduction. JonBenet, 6 years old, was described by those close to the family as lively and trusting, a child who loved her dolls and her brother. Burke, 9 at the time, was remembered as reserved, fond of trains and scouts, with the ordinary frictions of sibling life. John and Patsy Ramsey, her parents, presented themselves as grieving, cooperative in the beginning, though increasingly guarded as weeks passed. Their statements in the first days after the discovery shaped the early narrative. The family had returned from a Christmas dinner at the Whites' home around 9 or 10 p.m. JonBenet was carried upstairs asleep by her father, placed in bed in her clothes, and never awoke. No one mentioned a late-night snack. No one recalled preparing or serving pineapple. The timeline begins with the crime scene processing on December 26, 1996. Police photographs captured the breakfast room table, a white bowl containing chunks of pineapple and milk, a large spoon resting inside. Initially overlooked, thought perhaps to be cereal, the bowl drew attention after the autopsy results arrived weeks later. Forensic analysis matched the pineapple fragments in JonBenét's small intestine to the pieces in the bowl, down to the rind characteristics. Fingerprints were lifted, Burke's on the bowl and a nearby glass, Patsy's on the bowl as well. No prints from JonBenet appeared on the items, though she had ingested the fruit.
She was exhausted from the day's festivities. Patty told detectives she did not feed her daughter pineapple that night, did not place the bowl on the table, and could not account for its presence. "I did not put the bowl there," she said in one session. "I did not feed JonBenet pineapple." John echoed this. She was sound asleep, carried to bed, no activity afterward. The parents suggested the pineapple could have come from an intruder or been prepared earlier in the day, though no explanation fit the digestion timeline or the fresh appearance of the snack. Burke's early interviews conducted under protective conditions in late December 1996 and January 1997 aligned broadly with his parents. He described going to bed after arriving home, hearing nothing unusual, staying in his room. When shown a photograph of the bowl during one session, he appeared hesitant, covering his mouth at times, and did not immediately identify the contents clearly. He acknowledged liking pineapple, but offered no specific memory of that night. Years passed. The case grew cold, then revived in media. In September 2016, Burke, now 29, spoke publicly for the first time in a televised interview. He addressed the pineapple directly. He recalled sneaking downstairs after his parents were asleep to play with a new toy and eat a snack. Pineapple, he said. He did not remember JonBenét joining him, though he noted both siblings enjoyed the fruit. When asked about the bowl on the table, he suggested it might have been his, left out from a late-night moment. He emphasized no particular reason the detail would stick in memory after 20 years. "Would you remember eating pineapple 20 years ago?" he asked. He denied any conflict over it. This admission shifted the picture slightly. It placed Burke awake and downstairs after bedtime, contradicting the family's earlier insistence that everyone slept through until morning. It explained his prints, but left open how JonBenét consumed some without anyone noticing. Digestion timing. Undigested pieces suggesting recent ingestion clashed with the claim she never woke. If she ate upstairs in bed, no bowl would remain on the table. If downstairs, someone facilitated it quietly. Key turning points deepened the unease around these statements. The autopsy report, released months after the crime, revealed the pineapple when the family had already committed to the asleep upon arrival narrative. Police returned to the home, re-examined the overlooked bowl. Fingerprints confirmed family handling, yet no one recalled setting it out. In 1998, grand jury proceedings. Details partially leaked over time. The inconsistencies surfaced again, contributing to recommendations against the parents, though no indictments followed. By 2016, forensic reviews and documentaries highlighted the snack as evidence of activity posted, prompting Burke's interview as a response. What remains confirmed versus open questions separates clearly here. Verified pineapple in JonBenét's digestive tract matching the bowl. Fingerprints of Burke and Patty on the bowl. No intruder prints on it. Initial family statements omitting any late-night eating or preparation. The digestion window aligns with hours after returning home, not from the Christmas party earlier. Burke's 2016 statement acknowledges his own activity downstairs, but not interaction with his sister over the snack. Unknowns persist. Exactly when and how JonBenét ate the pineapple. Did she take a piece from the bowl while passing, or was it shared? Why the milk in the bowl, unusual for pineapple alone? Did the large spoon indicate preparation by an adult or child? No definitive timeline reconciles the parents' early denials with later allowances. No evidence proves the snack caused or related directly to the violence. Experts differ on motive theories tied to it. The pineapple stands not as proof of guilt, but as a small, stubborn discrepancy. A minor household detail that should have been trivial became a measure of reliability. If one piece of the night's story, the simple act of bedtime, does not hold under scrutiny, observers naturally wonder what else might shift. The question lingers without resolution. How many other ordinary moments were reframed, forgotten, or left untold in the effort to make sense of an unthinkable loss? In the segments to come, I will examine other behavioral patterns and statements that accumulated over decades. These are not indictments. They are threads that refuse to lie flat. The audience must weigh them carefully, as I have, against the weight of time and the absence of final answers. The individuals involved remain the core family. JonBenét, the 6-year-old victim, was remembered by those who knew her as bright, expressive, and affectionate toward her brother. Burke, 9 at the time of the crime and now approaching 40, has been described in various accounts as quiet, interested in hobbies like scouting and model building, and prone to typical childhood frustrations. John and Patty Ramsey, his parents, navigated intense scrutiny while attempting to protect their surviving child from further exposure. Their decisions, limiting early interviews, hiring counsel, and later allowing controlled public statements, shaped how Burke appeared before cameras and investigators. The timeline of Burke's public and semi-public appearances begins shortly after the discovery. On January 8, 1997, roughly 2 weeks after JonBenét's body was found, Burke was interviewed at a child advocacy center by Dr. Suzanne Bernhardt, a specialist in child psychology. The session, arranged through Boulder Police but conducted gently, included drawing exercises and open questions about family life and the events of Christmas night. In footage later aired, Burke drew a picture of his family that omitted JonBenét entirely. He spoke calmly about his parents, describing his father as often at work, his mother as affectionate with hugs, and answered questions about the morning Patty burst into his room in distress. He appeared focused on the task, at times upbeat or matter-of-fact, with little visible distress. When asked about his sister's absence, he noted she was gone and did not include her in the drawing. The psychologist later observed that his responses showed protectiveness towards his family, difficulty expressing negative feelings about them, and no clear signs of having witnessed trauma, though she noted possible indications of a strained home environment. Additional sessions followed. In August 1998, Burke spoke again to police, then 11 years old. He recounted waking to his mother's frantic search, coming downstairs excited thinking JonBenét had been found, only to learn from his father that she was in heaven. He described hearing his mother going psycho in distress. His delivery remained composed with occasional squirming or casual gestures like sipping from a soda can. These early recordings, portions released over time, captured a child responding under controlled conditions, shielded from aggressive questioning due to age. Nearly 2 decades passed before Burke appeared publicly. In September 2016, at age 29, he sat for a multi-part interview with Dr. Phil McGraw. This marked his first voluntary media engagement. He addressed long-standing theories, the pineapple detail, his memories of the night, and the impact of suspicion on his life. Throughout the conversation, he maintained the consistent expression, a slight, fixed smile, occasional nervous laughter, averted or darting eye contact, and a flat affect when discussing painful topics. When Dr. Phil showed clips of the 1997 drawing session or questioned him about sibling incidents like striking JonBenét with a golf club years earlier, which he described as accidental, Burke responded with smiles or chuckles that struck many viewers as mismatched. He explained his limited curiosity that morning as typical for a child focused on his own world, and he denied any involvement. These moments became turning points in public perception. The 1997 footage, when juxtaposed with 2016 clips, highlighted continuity, a pattern of composure, minimal emotional display, and protectiveness towards family. The emotional interview amplified scrutiny. Viewers noted smiles during discussions of his mother's anguish or the murder itself. Dr. Phil later addressed the reactions, describing Burke as socially awkward, attributing the smile to anxiety or a nervous habit formed under lifelong pressure. He emphasized that trauma responses vary widely, especially for someone isolated from normal childhood after such an event. Other commentators, including body language analysts and documentaries, pointed to the unusual affect, frozen expressions, inappropriate laughter as potentially indicative of detachment. Yet child psychology experts familiar with trauma cases have cautioned against overinterpretation. Grief in children and adults exposed to prolonged media scrutiny does not follow a single script. Flat affect, delayed processing, or even smiling can serve as coping mechanisms. Dissociation or responses to anxiety rather than indicators of guilt or pathology. What stands as confirmed separates sharply from speculation. Verified elements include the existence of the footage, the 1997 drawing omitting JonBenét, Burke's calm recounting of hearing his mother's distress, his 1998 description of learning of her death, and the 2016 interview where he smiled during heavy topics while maintaining innocence. No expert in those sessions diagnosed sociopathy or deception. The child psychologist noted protectiveness and possible family strain, but no evidence of witnessing the crime. Dr. Phil defended the demeanor as anxiety-driven. Public and media interpretations often leaned on expectations, visible tears, overt sorrow, rather than clinical understanding of trauma's diversity. Open questions remain plentiful. Why the consistent composure across decades? Does it reflect individual personality, learned behavior from a family under siege, neurodivergence, or something unresolved from childhood? How much weight should demeanor carry absent corroborating evidence? No psychological evaluation has publicly labeled Burke's responses as pathological in a criminal sense. Trauma literature shows wide variation. Some children withdraw, others appear unaffected outwardly while processing internally. Media amplification distorts these nuances, turning personal coping into perceived clues. Burke has become, in many ways, a casualty of that distortion. Protected as a child by legal and ethical limits, he later entered the public eye on his own terms, only to face judgment based on facial expressions rather than facts. The recordings invite scrutiny, yet they offer no definitive proof. They reflect a person shaped by loss, suspicion, and isolation. The case continues to turn on these human elements, how people appear under unimaginable strain. In the segments ahead, I will trace other threads, forensic reconsiderations, parental statements, and the enduring gaps in the record. These observations stand as they are, without conclusion. The audience must decide what, if anything, they reveal about truth, grief, or the limits of our ability to read another's inner world after 30 years. In the Ramsey household in Boulder, Colorado, one documented incident involving the two children quietly entered the investigative record. This single verified fact has remained unchanged since it first surfaced. At some point prior to the homicide, Burke struck JonBenét with a golf club, causing an injury to her face. The people connected to this event are the same family members who would later face unrelenting public attention. JonBenét, then a preschool-aged girl, was described by those who knew the household as playful, energetic, and close to her older brother in the way siblings often are, sharing toys, squabbles, and affection. Burke, 3 years her senior, was remembered as a typical boy of his age, interested in scouts, building models, playing video games, and occasionally displaying the impatience or frustration common in childhood. Joan and Patsy Ramsey, their parents, presented a picture of a stable, affluent home. Joan managing a growing technology business. Patsy recovering from serious illness while raising the children and maintaining family routines. The golf club incident occurred in this ordinary domestic setting, away from any spotlight. The timeline of how this detail reached investigators is straightforward. The event took place sometime in the early 1990s when JonBenét was approximately 4 or 5 years old and Burke 7 or 8. According to statements provided by Joan and Patsy during police interviews in late 1996 and 1997, the strike happened accidentally during play. JonBenét had wandered into Burke's path while he was swinging a club, likely practicing or fooling around indoors or in the yard. The club made contact with her face, resulting in a visible mark or small laceration near the eye or cheek. The family sought medical attention. A physician documented the injury as minor and non-life-threatening. No police report was filed at the time. No child protection agency was involved. The parents characterized it consistently as an innocent mishap. 2 children playing, one not paying attention, a moment of poor coordination. When Boulder detectives began building a background profile in the weeks after the discovery of JonBenét's body, they asked the parents about any prior incidents of physical conflict between the siblings. Joan and Patsy disclosed the golf club episode voluntarily. They emphasized its accidental nature, the quick resolution, and the absence of lasting harm or ongoing tension. Medical records confirmed the injury had healed without complication. No witnesses outside the family provided contradictory accounts. The detail entered the case file as historical context, not as evidence of criminal intent or pattern. Several years later, in Burke's 2016 interview with Dr. Phil McGraw, he addressed the incident directly when shown a photograph of JonBenét with the facial mark. He acknowledged the event, describing it much as his parents had, an accident during play. He expressed regret for the outcome, but maintained it was unintentional. No new details emerged to alter the original family account. These turning points, disclosure to police in 1996-1997, inclusion in investigative summaries, and public discussion in 2016, transformed a private childhood mishap into a piece of public speculation. Legally, the incident carried no weight.
Colorado law at the time, and still today, treats acts between young siblings under specific age thresholds as matters for parental discipline or family intervention, not criminal prosecution, absent severe injury or repeated abuse. No charges were ever considered. No pattern of violence was documented. Child welfare evaluations conducted in 1997 found no evidence of endangerment or abuse warranting removal or monitoring. Yet, in the realm of inference, the detail acquired a different life. Observers, journalists, true crime authors, online commentators began to frame it as context. A single documented physical act between siblings became a building block in theories of jealousy, resentment, or unchecked impulse. The golf club was recast not as a toy in clumsy hands, but as a weapon in a moment of anger. The facial injury, minor and healed, was sometimes described in language that implied greater severity. The absence of any subsequent reported incidents did little to dampen the narrative. Once placed in a timeline of sibling relations, it invited projection. If this happened once, perhaps underlying tensions existed. If tensions existed, perhaps they escalated over time. This is the fragile boundary between childhood behavior and adult projection. Children, especially boys and girls separated by a few years, frequently clash. Toys are grabbed, spaces are invaded, hands, feet, or objects make contact. Most such moments resolve without lasting consequence. Apologies offered, lessons learned, parental guidance applied. The vast majority never enter any official record. When one surfaces in a high-profile case, however, it becomes susceptible to reinterpretation. What was once ordinary sibling friction is examined through the lens of hindsight, magnified by tragedy. The mind seeks patterns.
Emotional strike offers a ready one. Without additional corroboration, though, the leap from isolated incident to motive remains speculative. Known facts stand apart from interpretation. Confirmed, the golf club contact occurred. It caused a minor facial injury. Medical attention was obtained. The family reported it as accidental. No further similar incidents were documented in school, medical, or social service records. Burke and his parents have consistently described it the same way across decades. No forensic, behavioral, or psychological evaluation has ever linked this event to criminal predisposition. Child development literature describes such occurrences as within the normal range of sibling interaction for that age group, particularly when supervision is momentary or play is unsupervised. Open questions persist as they must in any incomplete record. Was the strike truly accidental, or did frustration play a role that day? Did the incident leave any emotional residue for either child? Did the parents address it in ways that shaped future dynamics? No diary entries, therapy notes, or third-party observations have surfaced to answer these. No school counselor flagged ongoing conflict. No neighbor or relative described a household marked by frequent fighting. The detail invites reflection on how we weigh past actions. A single childhood event, benign in isolation, gains weight when placed beside an unthinkable loss. Yet weight added by speculation is not the same as weight added by evidence. The golf club incident exists as one small piece of a much larger puzzle, one that remains unfinished. It reminds us that context can illuminate, but it can also distort when allowed to stand alone. In the Ramsey home at 7551 15th Street, Boulder, Colorado, on the night of December 25 into December 26, 1996, a head injury consistent with a single forceful blow from a blunt object was inflicted on 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey. This single verified fact, documented in the autopsy performed by Dr. John Meyer, has never been disputed. The skull fracture measured approximately 8.5 inches in length, depressed the bone inward by about half an inch, and caused immediate unconsciousness, followed by death from asphyxiation hours later. The force required, according to forensic pathologists who reviewed the case, falls within the range that a 9-year-old child could generate with a household object swung in anger or panic. The individuals at the heart of any discussion of an accident scenario remained the 3 people present in the house that night. JonBenét, described by teachers, neighbors, and family friends as a trusting, imaginative child who enjoyed dolls, pageants, and following her brother around. Burke, her 9-year-old brother, recalled by those who knew him as quiet, mechanically inclined, sometimes withdrawn, with the ordinary ups and downs of a boy his age. John and Patsy Ramsey, the parents. John, a disciplined executive accustomed to problem-solving under pressure. Patsy, a devoted mother, still carrying the emotional weight of her earlier cancer diagnosis and the loss of a child from a previous marriage. Their actions in the hours and days after the discovery would be examined through every possible lens. The timeline of theories that frame the death as accidental begins not in 1996, but in the months that followed, as investigators and independent experts grappled with the crime scene. By mid-1997, Detective Steve Thomas, one of the lead investigators, privately favored a scenario in which an argument or rough play between the siblings escalated. A flashlight found on the kitchen counter, similar in size and weight to the object that could have produced the head wound, was tested for prints and fibers but yielded inconclusive results. The blow itself, per biomechanical analysis later commissioned, did not require adult strength. A child swinging an object with momentum could deliver sufficient force, especially if the recipient was smaller and caught off guard. No weapon was ever definitively identified, but household items, flashlight, baseball bat from Burke's room, even a piece of train track from his collection, were considered possibilities. A separate line of thinking developed by some forensic consultants and later echoed in public discussions posited that the initial injury occurred downstairs, perhaps in the kitchen or play area. The undigested pineapple in JonBenét's stomach placed her activity within a window of 1 to 2 hours before death. If she had been struck there, the sequence could have unfolded in minutes. A moment of frustration, a swing, a fall, immediate loss of consciousness. The parents, discovering her unresponsive, might have believed she was already dead or dying. Panic could follow. Fear of scandal, fear of losing their remaining child to the justice system, fear of public judgment in a community where they were known figures. From that point, various versions of a cover-up scenario have been proposed. In one reconstruction, the adults move the body to the basement wine cellar to buy time. The garrote is applied, perhaps in a misguided attempt to stage a sexual assault or to ensure death appeared intentional rather than accidental. The ransom note, written in Patsy's handwriting style according to some analysts, is composed on a pad from the house, demanding an amount matching John's recent bonus. The staging elements, duct tape, wrist ligatures, the note left on the stairs, serve to shift suspicion outward. The family returns upstairs, waits until morning, and Patsy makes the 911 call at 5:52 a.m., reporting a kidnapping. Another variation suggests the staging began almost immediately after the head blow. The parents, convinced the injury was fatal and fearing questions about supervision or sibling dynamics, decide to protect Burke at all costs. They alter the scene to suggest an intruder, knowing the absence of forced entry would eventually point inward, but hoping the note and staging would create reasonable doubt. John carries the body downstairs. Patsy writes or dictates the note. Both participate in binding the wrists loosely and placing the tape. The garrote, constructed from cord available in the house and a broken paintbrush handle from Patsy's art supplies, becomes the final act, either to mask the head injury as cause of death or to simulate strangulation from an outsider.
These scenarios gained traction in certain circles because they accounted for several observed facts without requiring premeditation or extreme violence from a child. The head wound showed no defensive injuries on JonBenét's arms or hands, consistent with a sudden, unexpected blow rather than a prolonged struggle. The vaginal trauma described in the autopsy as consistent with digital penetration or a small object, in theory could have occurred post-mortem during staging. The absence of widespread blood spatter or signs of a prolonged fight aligned with a single catastrophic impact, followed by unconsciousness. The pineapple bowl with Burke's fingerprints placed him downstairs late at night, potentially setting the stage for an encounter. Yet every version of the accident and cover-up hypothesis collides with the same immovable barrier. The physical evidence does not support it. No DNA from Burke was recovered on JonBenét's clothing, skin, or bindings. Touch DNA, low-level mixtures, and trace samples were tested repeatedly. The only foreign profile belonged to an unknown male found in multiple locations on her long johns and under her fingernails. That profile has never matched any Ramsey family member. No blood from JonBenét appeared on Burke's clothing, bedding, or anywhere else in his room or bathroom that morning. Luminol and alternative light sources revealed no cleaned-up blood trails between the supposed injury site and the basement. The garrote knot, complex and deliberate, has been described by experts as unlikely to be tied by a 9-year-old in panic. It required tension and precision inconsistent with haste. The ransom note itself presents another obstacle.
Emotional tone. 3 full pages drafted on a notepad from the house contained phrasing and vocabulary that analysts linked more closely to adult composition than to a child's imagination. Handwriting experts disagreed on Pat's involvement. Some excluded her, others found similarities too close to ignore, but no child's handwriting was ever suggested. The note's calm, rehearsed tone jars with the idea of parents in the grip of immediate terror over an accidental death. Behavioral evidence adds further friction. The parents' demeanor in early interviews, cooperative at first, then increasingly lawyered, does not perfectly match people who have just staged a scene to protect a child. They permitted friends into the house before the body was found, potentially contaminating the scene. Yet they also preserved certain areas. They gave hair and handwriting samples willingly, yet resisted deeper questioning about family dynamics. Burke's own interviews, limited and protected, showed no signs of acute guilt or trauma consistent with having caused a fatal injury hours earlier. Known facts stand clear against these theories. Confirmed, the head injury required force achievable by a child. No intruder DNA matched any known person. The staging elements were present. The note existed in Patsy's pad. The pineapple was consumed late. Burke's prints were on the bowl. No physical trace, blood, semen, saliva, skin cells, fibers, tied Burke to the bindings, the garrote, the tape, or the body after the injury. The unknown male DNA profile, retested with modern methods as recently as 2023-2024, remains unidentified and excludes the entire Ramsey family. Open questions accumulate. If an accident occurred, why no trace evidence from the staging participants on the ligatures or notepaper? Why the elaborate garrote rather than a simpler method to explain death? Why the precise ransom amount matching a recent paycheck figure known only to family and employer? Why no confession, therapy record, or behavioral shift in Burke over 30 years that suggests unresolved guilt? Why did independent forensic reviews, including a 2023 panel convened by the city of Boulder, conclude that the evidence still leans toward family involvement without identifying a specific actor? The accident hypothesis, and the cover-up that would necessarily follow, remains plausible on paper because it humanizes the unimaginable. Ordinary people in extraordinary panic making catastrophic decisions to shield a child. Yet plausibility is not proof. The absence of supporting trace evidence after decades of testing with increasingly sensitive techniques creates a void that speculation cannot fill. No theory has crossed that threshold. The people at the center of this absence are the three individuals known to have been in the house that night. JonBenét, 6 years old, was described by those who knew her as gentle, imaginative, and deeply attached to her family routines. Burke, 9 at the time, was remembered by teachers, neighbors, and extended family as reserved, mechanically curious, and capable of the ordinary flashes of temper that mark many children his age. John and Patsy Ramsey, their parents, were seen in their community as attentive and protective. John methodical in his professional life, Patsy warm and organized in the home. Their decisions in the immediate aftermath, calling friends to the house, retaining counsel early, limiting access to Burke, shaped how the investigation unfolded around the surviving child. The timeline of evidence collection and analysis begins on the morning of December 26th. Police secured the residence, photographed every room, lifted prints from surfaces, and collected fibers, hairs, and trace materials. The body was examined at the scene and later at the autopsy suite. Swabs were taken from JonBenét's skin, clothing, fingernails, and genital area. Bindings, duct tape, the garrote cord, and the paintbrush handle were bagged separately. The ransom notepad, pen, flashlight, pineapple bowl, and other household items were processed. Over the following weeks and months, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and private laboratories conducted tests for blood, semen, saliva, skin cells, and foreign fibers. DNA profiles were developed from unidentified samples. In early 1997, results began to return. A mixture of DNA profiles appeared under JonBenét's fingernails and in spots on her long johns. One profile, a small amount of male DNA not matching any Ramsey family member, was designated Unknown Male 1. It appeared in multiple locations, consistent with touch or transfer. No profile matched Burke. No blood from JonBenét was found on his clothing, bedding, or personal items seized that day. No fingerprints belonging to him appeared on the duct tape, the garrote components, or the ransom note paper. The pineapple bowl carried his prints and Patsy's, but the glass beside it showed only Patsy's. The flashlight yielded no usable prints tying it to anyone. By 1998, as the grand jury convened, forensic summaries confirmed the pattern. Touch DNA technology at the time was limited, yet even the most sensitive tests available did not place Burke's genetic material in incriminating positions. The unknown male profile persisted as the only foreign contributor. No semen was present. No saliva matched family members on the bindings. The garrote knot, examined under magnification, showed no cellular material from Burke or his parents. Years later, technology advanced. In 2003, Bode technology retested samples using STR and YSTR methods. The unknown male profile was refined, but still excluded the Ramseys, including Burke. In 2008, then District Attorney Mary Lacey issued a public letter exonerating the family based on that DNA, stating it pointed to an outsider. That letter was later criticized and informally withdrawn by successors, yet the underlying lab reports remained unchanged, no match to Burke. Genetic genealogy efforts applied to other cold cases with success were attempted here in the 2010s and 2020s. As recently as 2023-2024, Boulder Police confirmed they continue to review the profile through newer databases. No hit has connected it to any known individual, and no reanalysis has produced Burke's DNA where it was absent before. These absences form turning points in how the case is perceived. The lack of trace evidence linking Burke to the staging elements, the bindings applied with apparent care, the garrote constructed deliberately, the note composed at length, creates a barrier no theory has surmounted. Had a child caused the initial injury and then participated or witnessed a cover-up, one would expect transfer. A hair, a skin cell, a fingerprint, a fiber from his clothing on the tape or cord. None appeared. The absence is consistent across decades of testing, from basic chirology in 1996 to mitochondrial and low copy number DNA methods today. What stands as confirmed separates cleanly from what remains open. Verified facts include these voids.
No Burke DNA on JonBenet's clothing, bindings, or body after the assault. No blood spatter or cleaned blood trails connecting him to the basement or any injury site. No fingerprints of his appeared on the duct tape, the garrote components, or the ransom note paper. The pineapple bowl carried his prints and Patsy's, but the glass beside it showed only Patsy's. The flashlight yielded no usable prints tying it to anyone. By 1998, as the grand jury convened, forensic summaries confirmed the pattern. Touch DNA technology at the time was limited, yet even the most sensitive tests available did not place Burke's genetic material in incriminating positions. The unknown male profile persisted as the only foreign contributor. No semen was present. No saliva matched family members on the bindings. The garrote knot, examined under magnification, showed no cellular material from Burke or his parents. Years later, technology advanced. In 2003, Bode technology retested samples using STR and YSTR methods. The unknown male profile was refined, but still excluded the Ramseys, including Burke. In 2008, then District Attorney Mary Lacey issued a public letter exonerating the family based on that DNA, stating it pointed to an outsider. That letter was later criticized and informally withdrawn by successors. Yet the underlying lab reports remained unchanged, no match to Burke. Genetic genealogy efforts applied to other cold cases with success were attempted here in the 2010s and 2020s. As recently as 2023-2024, Boulder Police confirmed they continue to review the profile through newer databases. No hit has connected it to any known individual, and no reanalysis has produced Burke's DNA where it was absent before. These absences form turning points in how the case is perceived. The lack of trace evidence linking Burke to the staging elements, the bindings applied with apparent care, the garrote constructed deliberately, the note composed at length, creates a barrier no theory has surmounted. Had a child caused the initial injury and then participated or witnessed a cover-up, one would expect transfer. A hair, a skin cell, a fingerprint, a fiber from his clothing on the tape or cord. None appeared. The absence is consistent across decades of testing, from basic chirology in 1996 to mitochondrial and low copy number DNA methods today. What stands as confirmed separates cleanly from what remains open. Verified facts include these voids. No Burke DNA on JonBenet's clothing, bindings, or body after the assault. No blood spatter or cleaned blood trails connecting him to the basement or any injury site. No fingerprints of his appear.
Why has no additional genetic material surfaced in 30 years of re-examination? Could contamination explain some absences, or does the pattern of exclusion point to a true outsider? These gaps do not prove innocence. They simply prevent proof of guilt. The consequence is clear. Burke Ramsey has never been charged with any offense related to his sister's death. He has never been named an official suspect by any law enforcement agency or prosecutor. Grand jury proceedings in 1998-1999 heard extensive evidence and voted not to indict. Subsequent district attorneys, Alex Hunter, Mary Lacey, Stan Garnett's successors, have either declined to pursue family members or focused resources elsewhere. Boulder police statements as late as 2024 described the case as open and active, but acknowledged no imminent arrests. Burke, now an adult in his late 30s, has lived privately, worked in technology, and occasionally spoken publicly to assert his innocence. No new forensic link has emerged to alter his legal status. This absence of evidence is itself a form of information. In criminal investigation, what does not exist can be as telling as what does. The lack of physical connection to Burke has kept suspicion in the realm of speculation rather than courtroom fact. It has allowed theories to circulate: accidental injury followed by parental cover-up, sibling conflict escalating fatally, or something more deliberate. Yet none have crossed into prosecutable territory. The case remains unsolved, not because evidence points decisively in one direction, but because the material traces refuse to align with any single narrative. As Burke Ramsey moved from childhood into adulthood, public suspicion did not fade, it evolved. It found new outlets in television specials, books, online forums, and later streaming documentaries.
One unsettling verified fact stands out across this period. Burke has never been charged, indicted, or formally named a suspect by any law enforcement authority. Yet segments of the media continued to present theories implicating him directly. The people most directly affected by this persistent narrative are the surviving members of the immediate family. Burke, who turned 18 in 2006 and entered his 20s in the following decade, sought a private life, attending college, pursuing a career in technology, living away from Boulder. John Ramsey, his father, remarried in 2011 and has spoken publicly on occasion to defend the family's position. Patty Ramsey died of ovarian cancer in 2006, never seeing the later wave of renewed attention. Their collective experience has been shaped by a cycle of accusation, response, and legal counteraction. The timeline of media portrayals and legal responses begins in earnest around 2016. That September, CBS aired a two-part documentary titled The Case of JonBenét. The program featured a panel of experts, former detectives, forensic specialists, a child psychologist who reconstructed events and arrived at a conclusion that placed responsibility on Burke. They suggested he had struck his sister in anger over a perceived slight, that the parents had then staged the scene to protect him. The episode included dramatizations, voiceover narration, and commentary that described the theory as the most logical explanation. Burke was 29 at the time. Within days, his attorneys filed a defamation lawsuit in Michigan State Court against CBS, the production company, and several of the on-air contributors. The suit alleged that the program falsely accused him of murder, causing severe emotional distress and reputational harm. Similar actions followed. In late 2016, Burke also sued forensic pathologist Dr. Werner Spitz, who had appeared in the CBS program and later in other media reiterating the same theory. That case, too, centered on claims of defamation through unsubstantiated assertions of guilt. Around the same period, John Ramsey filed his own defamation action against a different author and publisher, whose 2012 book had advanced a comparable narrative involving Burke. These lawsuits were not isolated. They reflected a pattern. When media presentations crossed from speculation into declarative statements of fact, naming Burke as the perpetrator without new evidence, the family responded through the courts. Several turning points marked the legal outcomes. In January 2019, a Michigan judge dismissed Burke's lawsuit against CBS and the panelists, ruling that the statements constituted protected opinion rather than verifiable assertions of fact. The court noted that the program framed its conclusions as a theory supported by the panel's analysis, not as proven truth. Burke's attorneys appealed, but the dismissal was upheld. A separate settlement was reached with Dr. Spitz out of court in 2019. The terms were confidential, though public statements indicated Spitz agreed to retract certain on-camera remarks and to avoid repeating the accusation. John Ramsey's suit against the author yielded a retraction and apology published by the publisher in 2018, along with an undisclosed financial resolution. These resolutions, while not all courtroom victories, demonstrated that certain public claims had overstepped legal boundaries. Other media moments drew quieter responses. In 2017, a Netflix documentary series revisited the case and included interviews that leaned toward family involvement without naming Burke explicitly. No lawsuit followed. In 2021, Burke appeared briefly on national television to reiterate his innocence and describe the toll of lifelong suspicion. He spoke of isolation, of relationships strained by public perception, of the difficulty of living under a cloud that never lifts. These appearances were rare. For the most part, he has remained out of the spotlight. What stands as confirmed separates clearly from what remains interpretive. Verified outcomes include these. Burke has never been faced criminal charges or civil liability related to his sister's death. Multiple defamation actions initiated by the Ramseys resulted in retractions, settlements, or dismissals on technical grounds. Some media entities adjusted language or issued clarifications after legal pressure. No new forensic or testimonial evidence has emerged in the past decade to alter Burke's legal status. Court records show that judges have repeatedly distinguished between protected expression of opinion and actionable defamation, particularly when no governing authority has accused him. Open questions persist around the human cost. How does constant insinuation affect a person who was 9 years old at the time of the tragedy?
What is the long-term impact of being cast without legal adjudication as the central figure in one of the most publicized unsolved cases in modern American history? The lawsuits achieved partial remedies, public retractions in some instances, financial compensation in others, but they could not erase the archive of video clips, articles, and forum threads that continue to circulate. Trauma of this kind is cumulative. It does not require a courtroom verdict to leave lasting marks. The legal battles also highlight a broader tension. When suspicion lingers without resolution, media fills the void. Theories proliferate because facts alone have not closed the case. Yet when those theories harden into declaration of fact against a private individual who has never been prosecuted, the courts have sometimes intervened to draw a line. The interventions have been uneven. Some claims survive as opinion, others are tempered, but they underscore that public discourse operates under different rules than criminal justice. Evidence thresholds in a courtroom are high, standards for television commentary are lower. Burke's experience illustrates the durability of doubt once it takes root in the cultural memory. He has not been exonerated in the public mind the way some imagine exoneration should occur through a definitive finding or a new suspect charged. Instead, he occupies a space defined by absence of charges, absence of conviction, absence of any official designation as perpetrator.
That absence has not quieted the narrative. It has, in some ways, sustained it. The people who carry the weight of those decades are few and familiar. JonBenét would be 35 years old today if she had lived. A woman shaped by her own choices, her own path. Instead, her name endures as a symbol of unresolved loss. Burke, now in his late 30s, has built a life away from the public eye. Education, employment in a technical field, a measure of ordinary privacy interrupted only rarely by his own choice to speak. John Ramsey, his father, continues to advocate quietly for the family, while living with a permanent shadow of grief and scrutiny. The wider circle, extended relatives, former friends, investigators who once worked the case, has largely receded, leaving the core narrative to those who were inside the house that night. The timeline of the past 3 decades traces a slow shift from active investigation to cultural memory. In the late 1990s, Boulder Police and the District Attorney's Office pursued leads on multiple fronts: the ransom note, unidentified DNA, potential intruders. By the early 2000s, the case had cooled, resources dwindled, yet the files stayed open. In 2008, then District Attorney Mary Lacey wrote a public letter citing DNA evidence to exonerate the Ramsey family, including Burke. That letter was later disavowed by subsequent officials who emphasized that it did not constitute formal closure. Advances in forensic technology, STR profiling, YSTR, genetic genealogy, were applied in waves. Each round reaffirmed the presence of an unknown male profile and trace amounts on JonBenét's clothing and under her fingernails. Each round excluded Burke and the rest of the family. No match has ever been made to any identified person. Media cycles revived attention at intervals. The 2016 CBS documentary prompted defamation litigation. Settlements and retractions followed in some instances, dismissals in others. Burke's rare public statements in 2016 and again briefly in the early 2020s reaffirmed his position without adding new factual detail. Boulder police statements, most recently in 2024 and 2025, describe the case as active with tips still received and reviewed. No arrests have been announced, no charges filed. The investigation persists in name, yet the pace reflects the reality of time. Witnesses age, memories fade, physical evidence degrades or has already been exhausted. Turning points in perception have come not from breakthroughs but from endurance. The absence of new forensic links has not silenced speculation. It has, in some ways, sustained it. When physical traces yield nothing conclusive, narrative fills the space. Theories that once circulated in books and forums now appear in streaming series and podcasts. Each retelling reframes the same gaps: the pineapple bowl, the flashlight, the note, the demeanor in interviews, as clues pointing in different directions. Yet none of these interpretations has produced evidence sufficient to alter Burke's legal standing. He remains neither convicted nor formally cleared in the way the public sometimes expects clearance. A named perpetrator arrested, a different explanation proven beyond doubt. What is known stands apart from what is felt. Confirmed facts include these. Burke was 9 years old at the time and legally protected from adult-style interrogation. No DNA, fingerprints, fibers, or biological material from him has ever been recovered in incriminating locations on JonBenet's body, clothing, bindings, or the staging elements. No confession exists. No witness has come forward with direct knowledge of his involvement. No prosecutor has found probable cause to charge him in nearly 30 years. The unknown male DNA profile, retested with modern methods, continues to exclude the entire Ramsey family. The case file, though quieter now, has not been closed. What remains open invites deeper reflection. Public suspicion has never required courtroom proof. It operates on a different threshold, one shaped by emotion, pattern-seeking, and the human need for resolution when none arrives. A child present in the house becomes, in the absence of an alternative answer, the focus of persistent doubt. That focus does not vanish with time. It adapts. It moves from police reports to television panels, from grand jury leaks to streaming series and podcasts. Each retelling reframes the same gaps: the pineapple bowl, the flashlight, the note, the demeanor in interviews, as clues pointing in different directions. Yet none of these interpretations has produced evidence sufficient to alter Burke's legal standing. He remains neither convicted nor formally cleared in the way the public sometimes expects clearance. A named perpetrator arrested, a different explanation proven beyond doubt. What is known stands apart from what is felt. Confirmed facts include these. Burke was 9 years old at the time and legally protected from adult-style interrogation. No DNA, fingerprints, fibers, or biological material from him has ever been recovered in incriminating locations on JonBenet's body, clothing, bindings, or the staging elements. No confession exists. No witness has come forward with direct knowledge of his involvement. No prosecutor has found probable cause to charge him in nearly 30 years. The unknown male DNA profile, retested with modern methods, continues to exclude the entire Ramsey family. The case file, though quieter now, has not been closed. What remains open invites deeper reflection. Public suspicion has never required courtroom proof. It operates on a different threshold, one shaped by emotion, pattern-seeking, and the human need for resolution when none arrives. A child present in the house becomes, in the absence of an alternative answer, the focus of persistent doubt. That focus does not vanish with time. It adapts. It moves from police reports to television panels, from grand jury leaks to streaming series and podcasts. Each retelling reframes the same gaps: the pineapple bowl, the flashlight, the note, the demeanor in interviews, as clues pointing in different directions. Yet none of these interpretations has produced evidence sufficient to alter Burke's legal standing. He remains neither convicted nor formally cleared in the way the public sometimes expects clearance. A named perpetrator arrested, a different explanation proven beyond doubt. What is known stands apart from what is felt. Confirmed facts include these. Burke was 9 years old at the time and legally protected from adult-style interrogation. No DNA, fingerprints, fibers, or biological material from him has ever been recovered in incriminating locations on JonBenet's body, clothing, bindings, or the staging elements. No confession exists. No witness has come forward with direct knowledge of his involvement. No prosecutor has found probable cause to charge him in nearly 30 years. The unknown male DNA profile, retested with modern methods, continues to exclude the entire Ramsey family. The case file, though quieter now, has not been closed. What remains open invites deeper reflection. Public suspicion has never required courtroom proof. It operates on a different threshold, one shaped by emotion, pattern-seeking, and the human need for resolution when none arrives.
A child present in the house becomes, in the absence of an alternative answer, the focus of persistent doubt. That focus does not vanish with time. It adapts. It moves from police reports to television panels, from grand jury leaks to streaming series and podcasts. Each retelling reframes the same gaps: the pineapple bowl, the flashlight, the note, the demeanor in interviews, as clues pointing in different directions. Yet none of these interpretations has produced evidence sufficient to alter Burke's legal standing. He remains neither convicted nor formally cleared in the way the public sometimes expects clearance. A named perpetrator arrested, a different explanation proven beyond doubt. What is known stands apart from what is felt. Confirmed facts include these. Burke was 9 years old at the time and legally protected from adult-style interrogation. No DNA, fingerprints, fibers, or biological material from him has ever been recovered in incriminating locations on JonBenét's body, clothing, bindings, or the staging elements. No confession exists. No witness has come forward with direct knowledge of his involvement. No prosecutor has found probable cause to charge him in nearly 30 years. The unknown male DNA profile, retested with modern methods, continues to exclude the entire Ramsey family. The case file, though quieter now, has not been closed. What remains open invites deeper reflection. Public suspicion has never required courtroom proof. It operates on a different threshold, one shaped by emotion, pattern-seeking, and the human need for resolution when none arrives. A child present in the house becomes, in the absence of an alternative answer, the focus of persistent doubt. That focus does not vanish with time. It adapts. It moves from police reports to television panels, from grand jury leaks to streaming series and podcasts. Each retelling reframes the same gaps: the pineapple bowl, the flashlight, the note, the demeanor in interviews, as clues pointing in different directions. Yet none of these interpretations has produced evidence sufficient to alter Burke's legal standing. He remains neither convicted nor formally cleared in the way the public sometimes expects clearance. A name